Okay, so I've made this video as a genre study for sonnets. Let's get right to it. The first couple of sonnets I have are in Italian, and you might be thinking, Dr. JP, I do not speak Italian. Guess what? Neither do I. But we can learn a lot from these sonnets about the form anyway, and maybe we can even learn more than we can from an English poem because we won't get caught up in like, what does it mean, because we can't read it, right? So let's just make some observations. We've got 4 stanzas, right? And they have some rhymes, okay? So we can sort of puzzle out based on spelling what those rhymes might be. Okay, so we can see that the rhymes go A through E. That means there are 5 rhymes. We can see that the first 2 stanzas rhyme the same way. When we have 2 stanzas of 4 lines together, that's called an octave. Okay, you don't have to know that term though to learn this. It just means there are 8 lines that have a relationship. Okay, these last 6 lines are also in a relationship. This is a sestet, it's 6 lines. Okay, all right, so we can tell then, because there's a relationship in the first 8 lines and a relationship in the last 6 lines, that there's a break of some kind here. Okay, the Italians called this a volta. A volta is a kind of dance that had jumps in it. And so a volta we would call a turn in the sonnet, all right? So you can see the rhyme scheme for this sonnet in Italian is ABBA, ABBA, CDE, EDC. Now, some Italian sonnets, just because I have some outside knowledge of the genre, would have this reversed, right? They would do CDE, CDE, and that's okay. But this is an Italian sonnet. This is what it looks like. Here's another Italian sonnet. We've got the octave, we've got the sestet, we've got A, B, B, A, right? And then these down here, they're a little different, okay? C, D, C, C, D, C. So instead of going all the way to E, Francesco Petrarch here has stopped and reused his C rhyme in the sestet, okay? I don't know why, because I can't read the Italian, but there's probably some reason for that. It's not that he just didn't want to think of another rhyme. It could just be also that Italian has so many rhymes that end in this signore sound, right? More. And so that could just be what's going on, but we're not sure, right? This is rhyme 140. Luckily, Sir Thomas Wyatt, who was a courtier for Henry VIII. I don't know why I have Edward on the brain. He was a courtier for Henry VIII. He did a translation of Petrarch's 140, so we can have a look at it. We can see that he's kept the general structure of the genre, right? But because this is in English, we can read it. So the long love that in my thought doth harbor, and in my heart doth keep his residence, into my face presseth with bold pretense, and therein campeth, spreading his banner. So he's got the same rhyme scheme. She that me learneth to love and suffer, and will that my trust and lust negligence be reigned by reason, shame, and reverence, with his hardiness taketh displeasure. Wherewithal into the heart's forest he fleeth, leaving his enterprise with pain and cry, and there him hideth, and not appeareth. What may I do when my master feareth? But in the field with him to live and die, for good is the life, ending faithfully. So you might say, what are we doing with this faithfully? It doesn't rhyme with anything in the stanza, right? We've got appeareth, fleeth, appeareth, and feareth that go together. We've got cry and die, Well, the answer is that this is also a D. In early modern English, faithfully and die were closer together vowel sounds than they are for us. So he's kept the same basic rhyme scheme as Petrarch as well as he's been translating. He reuses these rhymes and doesn't go all the way to E in the Italian sonnet form. Although he is still writing with this octave and this sestet, right? And so it's an Italian sonnet. He hasn't changed the form at all. Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, so you might just hear him referred to as Surrey, also translated Petrarch's Rhyme 140. And if you've noticed that these were published in the same year, that's because they were both published in a book called Toddle's Miscellany, right? And that came out in 1557. So here is Surrey's poem. Love that doth reign and live within my thought, and built his seat within my captive breast, clad in the arms wherein with me he fought. Oft in my face he doth his banner rest. So we're starting off easily enough, right? A, B, B, A. Let's see what the next lines do. But she that taught me love and suffer pain. Oh, we have a C here, okay? My doubtful hope and ache my hot desire. With shamefast look to shadow and refrain, her smiling face converteth straight to ire. And coward love then to the heart apace taketh his flight, where he doth lurk and plain, we're back to sea. His purpose lost, and dare not show his face. For my lord's guilt thus faultless bide I pain. This is a C, not an E. Yet from my lord shall not my foot remove. Sweet is the death that taketh end by love. All right, so you can see that Surrey is working not with a octave and a sestet, but with 3 4-line stanzas called quatrains, and with a 2-line, right, called a couplet. This is the basic format of the English sonnet, which Surrey invented, okay? Now, in a typical English sonnet, you would get E, F rather than E, C, and then G, G in the couplet. And you can see that, not here, this is an Italian sonnet, I've already marked it for you, by Sir Philip Sidney, from his sequence, Astrophil and Stella. Now, we're talking about the sonnet as a genre, but the sonnet sequence was also a genre, so linked sonnets. This is the first in that section of linked sonnets. Here is a typical Elizabethan sonnet by a sonneteer named Samuel Daniel. He's not super well known outside of Renaissance studies, but his sonnet sequence, Delia, is pretty delightful. This is Delia 4. Here's Edmund Spenser. He's a little different. His sonnet sequence is called the Amoretti, or the Little Loves. And the thing that's different about Spenser is that we've had all of these poems about love that isn't going very well, right? Sweet is the end, the death that taketh end by love, right? Like, that doesn't sound great. But Spenser's Amoretti, the sonnet sequence actually ends with a poem called Epithalamion, which is a wedding poem, right? So he gets the girl in this sonnet sequence, and that's a little bit different. His rhyme scheme is different too. So the cool thing about Spenser's rhyme scheme is that they interlock, right? So we have flowers and bowers, and gillyflowers and bellamoras, right? It's not exact, but there it is. And then I'm gonna switch my color here and show you that we have also found around, right? We only get those 2. I'm gonna switch my colors again. We get red, spread, bed, shed. Okay, I'm going to switch it to orange to show you the next one, okay? Columbines, Lesamines, right? And then the final one, I'll just do with this yellow highlight, smell and excel, Okay, so he too has a couplet. Let me just go to black. He also has a couplet here. And you can also break this into 4-line stanzas, right? Like it's just true. You can break it that way, right? Sorry, this line is a little short. But the stanzas interlock, as you can see, with the rhyme patterns that are red and green. And so it's not so easy. So not only is his subject matter different, his rhyme scheme is different. This is Shakespeare, the person you are probably most used to as far as sonnets go. And so not only do we call sonnets that are English sonnets, we also call them Shakespearean sonnets. Okay. So this is a really well-known one. You can see here the couplet. You can see the quatrain structure, right? The turns in Shakespearean sonnets tend to come down here, okay? In this poem, you can see that there's a little turn here, but the biggest one is here, and you can tell that because this anaphora at the beginning of the line further links the couplet. So those sonnets are all about love. So is this one, but it's about the love that a person has for his deity. It's a sonnet about the love between John Donne and God. The same with this one. George Herbert also writes love sonnets, right? But he's thinking about God. He's not thinking about a lady friend. Okay, here's Percy Bysshe Shelley's Ozymandias. He's not writing about love at all. He's writing about the passing of the world and mighty works. And he wrote this actually with like a sonnet contest with a friend of his. They were both published in a newspaper, and Bysshe Shelley's lasted, whereas his friends didn't really. But you can find it on the Wikipedia entry for Ozymandias. Here's Keats on the sonnet. And so if you were looking up the sonnet form and that was your genre, this one might be good because he's writing about the sonnet form itself and the problems he has with it in the English language. These are some more just famous sonnets. How do I love thee? And what lips my lips have kissed. This one is Billy Collins' sonnet. Now, if you were working on this as part of your project, this would be not just an example of a sonnet, but a how-to, right? Because throughout the poem, he tells you what you need and what makes a sonnet, right? He says it goes easily unless you get Elizabethan and insists the iambic bongos must be played. I didn't talk about this, but most sonnets that we've looked at so far are an iambic pentameter. So I'm just going to skip back to Shakespeare and show you this, okay? My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun, okay? This is just how iambic pentameter looks. It's 5 feet of iambs that go like that, okay? Unstressed, stressed. Okay, this is what the loop and the accent are, all right? I grant I never saw a goddess go. I forgot to do. Okay, that's a mess, but as any she belied with false compare. All right, there we go. So that's iambic pentameter. Now, the next poem I'm going to show you is Harriet Mullins's Dim Lady. This is a parody of Shakespeare's Sonnet 130, but this is a prose poem. So there are no lines, but it's a translation. And so we get to ask ourselves, like, is this a sonnet or is it just a prose poem? Or is it a prose poem sonnet? Is that even possible? There's another Harriet Mullen poem that you could pause and read if you want. This is Evan Boland's Atlantis, a lost sonnet. It has 15 lines. You could pause this and read it. This sonnet also has 15 lines. This half-hearted sonnet is only about half as long as it should be, right? It should be coming out this way, okay? The rhyme scheme is there, but the lines are short. Jericho Brown's Tradition does not rhyme at all until the last 4 lines, Blossoms and Poems, Cut Down, and Mike Brown. This is because he wants to put a lot of emphasis on the words poems and Mike Brown. Okay. Megan O'Rourke takes this never, never, never and makes that show up in her rhyme scheme. Okay. You get never, you get the things. Sorry, there we go. And you get you. The only outlier is goodbye.